Calm, focus, happy. Hey, Mindful Tribe, welcome back to the show. I am in such a great mood today. I think I always am in a pretty good mood, but I'm in an especially good mood right now because I've just been laughing and smiling, talking to my guest for a minute before I hit record. And she is the creator of Flowdreaming. How awesome does that sound? Her books and podcasts have been used across the world to transform people's inner emotional landscapes as well as their external lives. Her latest book is called Stuff Nobody Taught You, and it's a really cool book. So I think you're going to like it when you get your hands on this book. So it's just going to be a lot of fun talking to my guest. My guest is Summer McStravick. Summer, are you in mindfulness mode today?
I woke up in mindfulness mode. I did my own little practice this morning and I am here and raring to go.
That's fantastic. What does mindfulness mean to you, Summer?
Yeah, I was thinking about that question because I knew you were going to probably ask it. I think there's a traditional interpretation of mindfulness. And then there's my own personal, more expansive definition of mindfulness. For me, it is an embodiment of starting with a feeling of presence, right? Traditional presence. I'm
Mm-hmm.
here. But then I move into the next feeling state, which is this present moment is my entire point of power, not in the past, not in the future, right here. And the whole future that streams out for me is coming from this moment. So there's almost like a weightiness to it for me. Like, what do I want to put into this moment? And that's why I veer often into the realm of, quote, manifesting, because I'm always thinking, what do I place in the moment? I align and then I create. So a
I
complex
like that.
answer to a very simple question.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I'm fascinated to know about your experience working with Louise Hay. You worked with her for a decade. You created HayHouseRadio.com. What was it like working with Louise?
Gosh, that was, it's getting further and further in the past now. As I
Mhm.
look back and I realize, like, I find myself saying, well, those were the days. We do that. Those were the days. It
Yeah.
felt at the time that Hay House was really pivotal in the growth and expansion of just everything, alternative healing and manifesting, co-creation, Dr. Wayne Dyer's teachings. It was the nexus of everything. And of course, by this time, Louise, well, she started her company when she was in her 60s. So by the time we were working together, she was in her 80s. I remember one of her biggest birthday parties. So, her role at that point was to kind of nod her head and say, "You're doing a good job. You're doing a good job."
Mhm.
Kind of like the not a mascot, more like the empress of the office. And
Yeah.
every now and then she'd pop her head in and have a little talk and, work things out. But it was pretty cool. I just have to say it was very, very cool. And at the time I knew that I was surrounded by some teachers of the century. So it's a weird space knowing that you're doing that while you're also just working a regular job. It's
Yeah,
like
for
being in
sure.
two spaces at once.
Yeah. And I have to ask you about Wayne Dyer. What was it like working with Wayne Dyer?
I'll tell you a funny story. So, um, for about 5 years, I co-hosted the podcast with him, Wayne
Yeah.
Dyer's podcast, and part of my job was to make sure that it was all going to like flow okay,
Hmm.
because the way Wayne worked is I'd be like, and we're going live in 5, 4. Oh my God, where's Wayne? Wayne, please show up. 3, where's Wayne? Where's Wayne? 2. And usually right at the last second he'd slide in and he'd say, I was just out taking a ocean, a ocean body, run, scrub, bodyboarding or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are you even dry yet? He's like, no. And I'm like, you're on air. We're live. We've got a first caller. Let's go. But he just the sense of everything will work out. Everything is fine. So
Yeah.
I truly tried to learn from that and decrease my stress level as a result. I don't know if I was successful, but maybe a little bit. But
Wow.
that's just like one of his funny anecdotes, very indicative of his personality.
And what do you do to make you happy, Summer? What lights you up personally?
Okay, well, besides my work, which I love, obviously I've been committed to for 22, 23 years now.
Hmm.
Um, Personally, what lights me up, I'm kind of a homey person. I
Hmm.
have a rose garden where all my roses have little, name badges and the date they were planted, and it's a formal garden. I have koi ponds. I love my fish. Take care of my babies, my animals, my pets, my dog, my kitties, my family. So in many ways, I mean, I'm not that exotic, only in my thinking. In my surroundings, not so much. But
That's
that makes me happy.
that's really cool. So, what have you learned from your pets about mindfulness?
I saw that you recently put out an episode about dogs and mindfulness.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so, you know, partly what I do is I work as an empath as well,
Hmm.
with intuitive feelings.
Yeah.
So for me, it's very easy to sort of, again, align and to go back to mindfulness. For me, when I'm reading or feeling an animal or a person or anything, it's like getting two ships perfectly lined up, right? There's that alignment, and that can only happen right in the present, and it
Hmm.
often happens very quickly. There's not a lot of work to it. It's like two magnets coming together. Whenever I'm feeling my animals, whether I'm just, gosh, thinking about them, or petting them or being with them, they have a very different sense of seeing the world. They're present more than anything else, way more present than humans. They're right there where they are. And if you're trying to dig to the past or dig to the future with them, it gets a little mushy and weird. They're right, as mindful as you can say, as present as you can possibly be. So I guess, yeah, that's what I sense most, and I hope have picked up from them, as well as
Yeah.
just how to be loving and lie around and get petted and scratched and fed.
Yeah,
I'll take that
exactly.
too.
Yeah. Yeah, I just love pets as well. Just love it. Well, tell us about flow dreaming. Tell us about this mind body technique for manifesting and growing inner emotional strength.
Okay. So this is a practice that began as just my own. It was a private personal practice because, at the time, 20 some years ago, I had been, I was a mom to two little babies. Like I said, I was working full time, 12-hour days. And I just felt like all the people are telling me to think a certain way, feel a certain way, and life will give me certain things. But I have no time, and I'm tired, and I'm barely getting through all the things I need to do. So I was searching for something, and of course I started trying meditation. But I found that I became frustrated with myself very quickly because, as most people I know do when they begin, but I found that my mind kept wanting to wander in a different direction. um, I would find myself daydreaming. I would find myself thinking about things, resolving things, visioning things, and especially feeling things. Well, I'm going to cut the whole long story short. How flow dreaming came about is I realized that the space that I was naturally like letting this daydream state lead me into, where I was seeing things and feeling things, is what they called flow state. I did a lot of research on it in the beginning. I wrote my first book about that, flow dreaming, at for Hay House with by Hay House. And so I was entering flow state sort of intentionally, whereas most people get in accidentally. We always talk
Hmm.
about, oh, and then you get in flow. Or, the latest way of approaching flow is very a driven kind of idea. Like, if I must enter flow for peak performance, I must do this to. My flow was a dreamy welcoming. And when in that flow state, I thought, well, I can either just feel the alignment and the flow, literally flow, the flow of time, the flow of us as beings growing, evolving, gathering information, as these human beings that we bring back with us to wherever we go next. What do I do in that state? So sometimes I just felt the embodiment of the state, perfect universal alignment. Some people might call it oneness, but because I'm that kind of person, again, got a little antsy in there, and I'd say, okay, I actually really want some things, and I'm not sure how to create them or make them, but I know that I need some universal help on this. So this is sort of like again, the origin story. So I began communicating in this state, and I realized that words were really ineffectual. Um, I could barely express in words the feelings that I wanted to have in my life. It would take thousands of words, whereas if I could just feel a feeling, life got it. Eventually, this practice evolved from this. And I realized that when I was going in there into this flow state, into flow dreaming, using this practice, it was like opening a conduit, right? From the physical to the non-physical. And my physical self would be going through my day, doing all the work that I need to do, the action stuff of life. The non-physical part of me was saying, don't just do the action stuff, give us a plan for this action stuff. So eventually I started, calling this uh, my like emotional blueprints, energetic blueprints. And I realized there's action and there's pre-action. So pre-action is what you do instead of reaction, which is how most of us are living in a very reactive mode constantly.
Mm-hmm.
We're always waiting for the next thing to respond to. And our responses and our reactions are what pull the emotion from us, give us permission to feel emotions. We're expected to feel emotional content in response to things. What I ended up doing was putting that completely backwards, cart before the horse. And I said, if I pre-act, if I pre-feel these emotional states before anything's been done to pull them from me, aren't I then becoming more of a creator? Aren't I then becoming a manifester? Aren't I then creating that blueprint? So I reversed a lot of how I was being in life. And I mean, I still work on this to this day. It's not a constant thing, but it is pretty deep embedded in my thinking now. If I want to have certain feelings in my life, I'm going to pre-act them, I'm going to feel them, I'm going to become them. And then I challenge life, you figure out how to match me. Because otherwise I spend all my day matching the randomness, seeming randomness, all the things, all the stuff other people throw in because they're for sure being random. And I try to kind of get an edge on that. So my flow dreaming practice puts me into this really deep manifestational space, where I am able to create, where I call them emotional endpoints.
Mm-hmm.
The emotional endpoints are, these are the feelings I want to have in my life. This
Mm-hmm.
is what I'm becoming. And often the emotional endpoints are associated with physical things I'm doing, right? So if I write a book, for example,
Yeah.
my emotional endpoints are, God, I hope it touches people. I hope it gets into the right hands. I feel it getting into the right hands. I feel it, you know, singing its verses to whoever needs it the most. So
Mm-hmm.
that becomes embodied with the book. That becomes embodied with not just getting a book published and sent out, but it becomes part of the whole book. If that makes sense?
Yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah.
And, I really like what you put in the subtitle about stop being miserable in your most recent book. Why do you think so many people find it so challenging to stop being miserable?
Oh my gosh, you're going to send me down the rabbit hole of lack thinking, right? You heard of that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, it's a thing with us humans
it is,
that we
isn't it?
tend to base our future on what's happened in the past.
Mm,
And it's hard to envision a future that doesn't have a nugget of our past experiences in it. And a lot of our past experiences are baked in with scarcity thinking, lack thinking, catastrophic thinking. There's all kinds of psychological terms for it, but in essence, we brace, and our bodies brace like for impact before we hear bad news. Our energetic selves are bracing for what's going to happen next. When is the next shoe going to drop? So we start carrying this energy around with us wherever we go, a defensive sort of energy.
yeah.
And so when we think about our future, we're kind of telling our future, I'm ready to defend myself against you. And what do you think life gives you in return? It's matching you, it's mirroring you. All right, we'll give you things that you have to defend because that's your expectation, that's your belief. You're prepared and you're ready for it. So we'll just keep that going as long as you want. And I lost the thread of your initial question.
Well, that's okay. I was going to ask you about fear because that's a big theme in your book. Chapter 7
Yeah.
is fear of feelings, and then you go
Yeah.
on and you talk about, F the fear, like let's just get through this. How did you
Yeah.
get through the fear yourself in your life?
I gotta say, there are F-bombs in this book. So if anybody is challenged by colorful language, it's not for you.
Right.
I use language though to like punch through sometimes. Like, I really need you to hear this. So I'm gonna get you a little funky about
Yeah.
it, and that way you'll hear
Yeah.
it. What got me to get through fear? Well, look, that's an ongoing lifetime experience. There was a point in 2015 where I realized I was really wanting to build my Flowdreaming company bigger,
Hmm.
wanting to get the message out, wanting to create my own empire, follow
Yeah.
Louise's footsteps and make something pretty awesome
Yeah.
that would help the world. And there was a moment when I realized the only thing really stopping me from doing this, it's not how much time I have or intelligence I have or the help and support, etc. All of those things can be created, made. But the thing that continuously gets in the way is fear. And I realized that fear was really the only emotion that would stop me time and time again. Fear of this, fear of that. And I traced back all the things that I hadn't done, couldn't do, wanted to do, but felt I wasn't ready for yet or wouldn't work out for me. They all came back to some basic fundamental energetic feeling, which was fear. So I said to the universe, all right, if I get rid of all fear in myself, and I don't mean healthy fear. I want to distinguish that. Healthy fear is don't touch the hot stove. Intelligent fear, right? But fear should be used like a fire alarm. Do
Hmm.
something about it. It shouldn't keep ringing and ringing and ringing every day of your life, a blaring sound that you no longer even hear. So fear has a really strong use, but I wanted to get rid of all the fear that had been lingering that I hadn't done anything with. So, of course, what does life do? Sends me breast cancer.
Oh, wow.
Now, I'm not saying this will happen to everybody, but basically, because like I said, I have a really good communication, I feel, with my greater self and
Yeah.
all what it is. Um, it's like, well, what's the biggest fear? And I'm like, dying, losing my kids, losing my life, potentially my identity, not knowing what's out there. I mean, really, we all most of us come down to that as our ultimate fear. Not everybody, though.
Yeah.
So I had to, I embarked on a series of exercises all year. Whenever I felt afraid of something, I had to do it. If I didn't want to make an email or a phone call, then I immediately made myself do it. If I was afraid to have a talk with somebody, as soon as I felt fear, I'm like, dang, now I have to do it. And it was just like an agreement I made inside. And when you start doing little brave actions like that, as I call them, they build. You do a lot of little ones, and the little ones become your norm. So then the ones that used to feel medium size now feel like little ones. Then you do a bunch of medium sized ones, and then they start to feel normal. So the big ones are now, oh. So I had to go through ultimately my fear of death and dying and cancer and loss. And it really made me understand that that's the only thing we fear in life generally. Feelings. We all say, oh, I fear losing my house, or I feel losing a child. And I'm like, you know why you feel fear losing your child? Because you're going to feel feelings. You're going to feel loss. You're going to feel dissolution of self.
Hmm.
You're going to feel anger. You're going to feel horrible things. You don't want to feel those. So it's kind of interesting when you jump into the world of feelings. I teach about feelings a lot in my work. I call them colored crayons in a box. They all have a purpose. Yellow crayons, green crayons, black crayons, blue crayons, they all have a purpose. And each one is a different kind of feeling, and it's helping you, guiding you, or you're coloring in your life with it. So we try to avoid the feelings we don't want, and we move toward the feelings we do want. That's all we do. And all the things that we create or manifest in our lives are just paths or physical things that we pick to try to reach some of these feelings or emotional endpoints.
I love your writing style, because you just cut to the chase. You just dig right in and you get to the point and you tell us all about it. I love the chapter Healing is like showering. Tell us how healing is like showering.
Do it daily.
We just have to keep doing it, don't we?
You
It's
can't.
never finished.
Yeah. Oops, sorry, my earbud just dropped out. That's what happens when I laugh. My earbuds pop out. Stop making me laugh, Bruce. Yeah. So healing, and that kind of ties into fear, right?
Yeah.
We heal ourselves every day that we're experiencing life. I assume that we're breaking things. And another analogy I use is healing is like Disneyland, right? If the park is, or Disney World, everybody knows, right?
Yep.
If the park is full and you got 100,000 people and they're throwing candy wrappers on the ground and they're putting their sticky fingers all over the rides and there's paper bags blowing across the grass, there's a little breakage that comes every time you have experiences. It just comes with the territory. So
Yeah.
every day, the groundskeepers at Disneyland come and they clean all the trash away at the end of the day, and they make it fresh for the new set of experiences. I'm
Yeah.
assuming if I don't have ongoing breakage, I'm not really living.
Mm.
So if you kind of build that in, you stop being afraid of the breakage, the heartbreak or the health problem, or the family member who's upset at you, and you realize, this is part of my living. This is supposed to be here. But what am I supposed to do? I'm also supposed to be cleaning it up. And
Yeah.
that brings me into the whole story of, how the heart processes life. And your heart is your organ for the healing, essentially. Physically, your heart removes all the debris, the lymph, etc., from your body, all the cellular debris. It pumps it out. But your heart also pumps in all the oxygen. Your heart is constantly cleansing your blood, in other words. Think about your heart maybe cleansing on other levels, or your energetic heart, right? A part of you. It is made to cleanse. It is made to do this. And yet often we just don't allow it, and we're afraid of it, so we avoid it. So we just let it kind of get packed in more and more and more and more.
Your analogies are just priceless. They're just so fantastic because they make it all come alive. They make the words just jump off the page. That's for sure. And
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question about bullying because I always touch on this topic in my podcast. Do you have a story about bullying where mindfulness would have made a difference, Summer?
I again, you gave me a little heads up on that. And I spent the longest time thinking about an answer to that. Because at first I thought, I have no idea. And then I thought, well, wait a second. I was bullied. So as a kid, I was, as you can imagine, pretty unpopular because I was weird. A lot of us were weird children.
Well,
And
sometimes the weird children hang out with the weird children and then everything's okay.
well, yeah, but in my neighborhood back in the 70s, there were 6 girls all my age, and they were all not weird.
Right.
So they told themselves.
I
I
hear
know in
you.
hindsight they were weird.
Yep.
But because I was kind of like coming from a hippie household, um, a lot of them felt like their parents distrusted us, or, you can't play at their house, that kind of thing. And in hindsight, again, I suffered a lot as a result of that. Felt very, very unpopular, very different than other people. But I didn't really have a desire to change myself from being different. But schooling years ahead, I realized that what these girls were doing and the bullying, it's because they either feared me or secretly wanted something that I was or had.
Right.
And I think, I don't know, I'm kind of guessing here. It's new territory for me. But they feared the fact that I was myself. I wasn't always fitting in and jockeying and playing silly games and so forth. And I think that was both refreshing and like, I want that, but also scary. How can you do that? You're not allowed to do that. I don't allow myself to do that. How can you do that? So there's some sort of anger and jealousy involved, but also fear, right? Because if a person is different than you and you have feelings about that difference, it's bad, it's awful, it's my parents wouldn't like it, I'm weak, I'm this or I'm that, then you try to push it away. You try to shove it away in the form of an actual person that embodies that fear for you. Anyway, those are just off the top of my head.
Yeah. Well, thanks for
My
sharing
personal
that, Summer.
experience. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Your website is flowdreaming.com and your podcast is called Flow Dreaming, a radical new technique for manifesting anything you want. And what can we expect to find when we go to your website, flowdreaming.com?
You can expect total overwhelm. No, seriously. I've had this website up since 2005
Oh,
when
yeah.
I wrote my first book. And since then, I've been the Energizer Bunny. So when I talk about doing flow dreaming, you can kind of think of it like meditation in a way.
Mhm.
You can meditate on your own, or you can listen to a guided meditation. So I realized people need to be walked through these flow dreams because they feel different. You daydream in, I'm asking you to bring up deep, strong emotion, find your emotional endpoints. And most people go in and they're like, I'm either doing self-hypnosis or I'm meditating. And I'm like, no, there's a different flavor here. The
Mhm.
flavor it's full of emotion. It's full of like a juiciness and alignment, a sense of being held and guided and flowing and moving. So all of that I tried to bring out in my voice and the images to get people into that really connected feeling state. So the website, as a result, has something like 360 flow dreams now that I've recorded on every conceivable thing under the sun,
Yeah.
um, as well as courses, working with me privately or having a single session with me. There's just a lot there. And the flow dreaming itself, I teach for free, and I always have. I've never charged a class to learn how to flow dream. I feel like it's a fundamental right that we all have to understand this piece of us that's already there. When I
Mm.
talk about flow dreaming, it's not something you learn or practice or discover. It's something that you awaken to, like, oh, this is an inborn, innate, already there skill. And now I'm actually consciously developing it instead of just letting it happen to me from time to time.
So what's
So
it
the
like?
website's full.
So what's it like if someone decides to work with you, Summer? What's that experience like?
Okay. Well, over the years, I've put together various layers of working. Some people come right in and say, coach me. Like, can you just guide me? You've done all these things that I want to do. Show me how you did them. Show me
Mhm.
how you were thinking. So I do a lot of sort of, I don't want to say high end coaching, but more intensive coaching for people who were like, again, cut to the chase. I've done all the stuff. I'm not where I want to be. Life's not, getting any longer. So can we get this done? And I'm like, yes, let's just get this done. I often say, take 5 years that it would take you to learn on your own. Let's do it in one, right?
Mhm.
What would that be worth for you? So that's one way. But other people are like, nah, I just want to dip my toes in. I don't know about who you are and about this so much. In that case, I say, you know what? Get a playlist of flow dreams. I have a free tutorial. I have an app, actually, a phone app that also teaches it. I'm like, just start. If this resonates, if this feels good, if you read my book and it feels good, hey, we'll go to the next step. A monthly, I have a I have a new monthly membership that's pretty low cost. And I get together with people, and every month we do something special. We do a flow dreaming live session, and for me, getting people in flow state and having me guide them over and over, once a month, twice a month, 3 times a month, 4 times a month. It's like having a private trainer in a gym. The more you do it, the more your muscles change. The more you flow dream, the more you energetically, emotionally change. So I'm always trying to get people, come, let's flow dream together. Let's flow dream together. So, and
That's
then
really
introductory
cool.
sessions. I don't want to go on too much, but it's all there. That's what it looks like.
Right.
We
That's
jump in
cool.
and
Yeah.
we
You've
go.
made that. Yeah. You've explained that really, really well. Yeah. That's fantastic. Well, as we move forward, Summer, in the interview, I want to ask you 5 quick answer questions. So just 30-second answers are perfect. The first one is this: who is one person that has been a really powerful mindfulness influence on you?
Ooh, one person has been the most powerful mindful. Mm, I know I'm supposed to say Dr. Dyer, but it may be more like Eckhart Tolle because
Yeah.
again, to go back to what I said in the very beginning, the power of this moment.
Yeah.
This is where our awareness is centered right this second.
Mhm.
Everything stems from this second. So I very much reflect that teaching of his.
How has mindfulness changed how you deal with your emotions?
Well, again, I think I've sort of folded the two together and baked a
Yeah.
little pie out of them, mindfulness and emotion. Um, I begin in a state of, for me, mindfulness is alignment, reaching a moment of a perfect and pure flow feeling. I'm moving through a state of no restrictions. There's no resistance. I mean, that's the definition of flow, the absolute lack of resistance. Think about electricity, right? It can flow without resistance, or you put little resistors in and pull it back. So mindfulness and flow to me, semi synonymous.
Hmm. Let's talk about breathing, Summer. Tell us some insights or some thoughts that you have about breathing and how it relates to mindfulness.
I love breath work. It's one
Yeah.
of my favorite practices, real breath work, where you're focusing on the breathing and nothing but the breathing. And I've had some extraordinary visions and experiences as a result of doing it. Um, when I flow dream or go into my aligned, mindfulness, getting into that state, I often begin with breath because, in my world, everything around us is energy and it's all moving forward through time and space. So everything is in a state of action. When I'm breathing, what I'm doing is I'm taking a little bit of the world into me. Like I'm literally taking the world into my being, and then I'm expelling a little bit of my being back into the world. So it's putting me into this really strong synergistic loop with life. Like it reminds me I'm not just this little body walking around kind of here, whatever. Every moment I am contributing a bit of myself into this world and taking it into me. Like I don't know if you can understand. For me, it's a profound feeling, a profound idea.
Well, I can
Um,
tell that. Yeah. From the way
yeah.
you're explaining it. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so your books are fantastic. Are there any other books that you would recommend that are related to mindfulness?
Any other books? That's tough. I don't want to
Yeah.
pick and choose among my
I
friends.
bet it's tough. Yeah, I can only imagine that would be a crazy tough question, and we can just put NA on there if you want. Are
I
there?
say
Well,
one person, I'm going to get a phone call from another one. Like,
yeah, sure, I
my book.
understand. And of course, apps. That's going to be easy because you have an app. Is it called
I
Flow
do.
Dreaming?
It is. It's flow
Yeah.
dreaming for meditation and
Okay.
manifesting. And
Yeah.
again, it comes with several free flow dreams as well as a whole tutorial teaching you how, getting you into that space. So that's the number one I'd recommend.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well, I'll have to check that out because I have not become familiar with Flow Dreaming, the app. So I'll check
Yeah.
that out for sure. And Mindful Tribe, I encourage you to check it out as well as the books, the book and the podcast, Flow Dreaming. Yeah, you got to check that out as well. As
Yeah.
we wrap up the interview, Summer, do you have any final words of advice for our listeners?
Oh, well, I know everyone's here because when you're attracted to mindfulness, it's one piece of a huge pie. Um, it's part of a way of seeing the world and embracing the world that extends beyond just the simple practice of mindfulness. We're growth seekers. We're people who want to experience and drink of life all that we can. We are people who can sometimes be impatient with blocks, patterns, resistance, things that get in our way, and we feel challenged by them, that I want to go past them. I want to see what's on the other side. We're hungry people, in other words. And along the way, this path that we're on, we pick up all the tools that, I don't know, just keep getting us through the next thing, whether it's mindfulness or flow dreaming or tapping or whatever it may be. So there's a commonality between us all, is I guess what I'm getting at. Um, so just remember that we're all of the same feather, even though we may pick different methods and routes. We're all heading to the same Emerald City.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Summer McStravick, it has been fantastic getting to know you and chatting with you and learning about the many thoughts and ideas that you have. Thank you so much for being on Mindfulness Mode, the podcast.
Oh, Bruce, thank you for allowing me to be here and having a great conversation. Loved it very much. Thank you.
My pleasure. All the best to you. Bye now.